If you could please call the roll to ascertain the presence of a quorum.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Here.
Councillor Campbell.
Here.
Councillor Siomo. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Asabi George. Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Flynn. Councillor Janey. Councillor McCarthy. Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Presley. Councillor Wu. And Councillor Zachem.
Here.
Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I am informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. At this time, I would like all guests, my colleagues and staff to please rise. Councillor Zachem will come up to introduce our clergy for the day, who will take us through the invocation. At that time, I ask that all guests remain standing, or that everyone remain standing as they take us through the Pledge of Allegiance. Councillor Zachem.
Thank you, Madam President. It is my pleasure to introduce today Pastor Orlando Hall, who's standing right here. He's the pastor of the Boston Temple in the Fenway, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and it's played a real role in the Fenway community over the years, doing a lot of participation in National Night Out there, which is where we first crossed paths, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have him here to kick off our meeting. So, Pastor.
Thank you. Before we pray, I wish to just direct your attention to a passage found in Scripture. Isaiah chapter 65 and verse 24 tells us that before we call, God will answer, and while we are yet speaking, he will hear. I wish to draw attention to this passage because the business that takes place within these chambers are very important, and as such should not be taken lightly. My role here to invite God's presence is not one that I take lightly. And therefore I wish to remind you that after this prayer, God's presence will be here to guide and direct that which is to take place. So therefore, with solemnity, I invite you to bow your heads with me as we pray. Eternal Father and God, we thank you for the blessing of life. We thank you for bringing us here in safety. And we thank you for the call that you have placed upon each of the council members, that they can work for the benefit of this wonderful community here in Boston. It is our prayer that as we gather to discuss pertinent issues, that you will be present with us. We ask, God, that you will bless us with wisdom, for you are the God of all wisdom. Remind us, Lord, that our wisdom is foolishness unto you. So may we not seek to be wise in our own eyes, but rather, Lord, have you lead and have you direct that which is to take place. And we pray, God, that this city will be united, will be strengthened, and will be a blessing to this nation because of the wisdom that you pour out in this room. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to invite up Councillor Janey for a special presentation. Thank you,
Ron. Yes. So thank you, Madam President. I want to invite Ms. Stephanie Thomas and her guests to please join me here. Do you want to come on up? You guys want to come up? Make your way? I'm going to start. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Come on. No, they can come, but you come first. So I have the great honor and pleasure of inviting to today's council meeting Ms. Stephanie Thomas, who is an amazing leader, She lives in my district. She is an activist. She has done amazing work. And what makes Boston so great as a city is our wonderful neighborhoods, and it's the residents of those neighborhoods that make our city great. And you are truly an unsung hero for all the work that you've done. I know that you've done important work. So Ms. Stephanie lives over near Whittier and has been a critical voice as that housing development is being redeveloped. She has done amazing work in terms of fighting for a shelter, a bus shelter, and making sure that that was replaced. And so now our seniors and those who need to sit while they wait for the bus, they now have a shelter to sit. Just this past Monday, you may have heard her on NPR. There was unfortunately a lot of gun violence in our community yet again. And we had Ms. Steffi, I heard you. I didn't tell you that I heard you on NPR, but I heard you on the radio talking about that. And so I just thought it was really important to invite her here today to recognize you as an unsung hero in the city of Boston and for all the great work that you do in Roxbury. Wanted to invite you here to be joined by your family and friends and other residents of Whittier to present you with this official resolution from the Boston City Council. This is from myself as well as all of my colleagues here for your amazing work. This is in recognition of your amazing work on behalf of the residents of the Whittier Street Housing Development to replace the bus stop sign specifically on Tremont Street and Melnia Cass Boulevard in the city of Boston, but for all of the work that you've done at Whittier and through the community. She's a big leader in the Unity Day, which is coming up. So she's just amazing, and I'm just going to present this to you, and if you want to say a few words, you're welcome. And then we're going to take some pictures.
I'd like to thank God for waking us all up this morning.
Amen.
It's an honor to see my friends, my family, the faces that I'm looking upon as I stand here and look all around. It's an honor, and I thank you, and I thank you, Kim, and I thank you, Rob, and I thank you, LaRue. This is my son, everybody. LaRue's my son. This is my daughter, Belinda. This is my niece, Anissa. Come here. No, I don't want to take it off. Yeah, my great-grandbaby, Aaliyah, she's sitting in a little stroller. I wish she had her up. I want to hold her up. Go ahead.
And if you want to say a few words,
Yeah,
we're going to take pictures.
Okay. Betsy, my ace, that's my girl Betsy, and everybody knows Miss Harriet. Miss Harriet, she's my ace, and then Dolly, thank you so much. Everybody know Dolly Battle. Everybody know Dolly Battle. Okay, Leah. And this is my great-great-grandbaby, Aaliyah, see? Okay, I'm going to say these few words because I know you all running a meeting and you all have to get everything together. Okay, listen, it's been a long, long journey. It took me four and a half years to fight the MBTA, even though I've been president of the board for almost nine years. But through it all, I wouldn't let up on that 47 bus stop sign because, you see, for the community, we needed that back up there because the seniors, I was concerned about the seniors when the wintertime came and we had to walk all the way to Ruggles to catch that bus. That was being unsafe. And not only that, you know, you have a lot of the residents that are used to go to different hospitals like Boston City Hospital, places like that, and then the bus come back and bring them back to the destination. You know, they always say this, and I believe this from the bottom of my heart, that there is a God. I mean, he never comes when when you want you. He doesn't come when he's supposed to be there, but he comes right on time. And what I'm saying is because I never thought this opportunity would ever got to me to be able to let everybody know that I'm the young lady right here that fought 4.5 years to get that MBTA 47 bus stop sign back up to where it belongs. And I want to let you all know that if you believe in yourself and if you believe that, you know, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And I was not going to give up doing it, and I'm so glad that I succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just thank you for your amazing work and your advocacy. I want to invite my colleagues up for a few pictures. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Stephanie.
All right, honey, thank you.
And this is for you.
Oh, thank you, honey, thank you. Okay,
I'm going to take just a few pictures.
okay. Get the baby.
One camera, shoot it.
Just be silent for a second.
Thank you so much.
Pat on the basket.
Thank you so much. It's always good to see you.
Councilor Presley will come up for a special presentation. And thank you again, Councilor Janey, and thank you, Ms. Thomas and family, for all your advocacy. What? I just want to make sure I had her name right, because I was going to say something.
Yes, Amari. With Parenting Journey, and Amari, would you guys join me at the dais, please? So it's very, yeah, so it's unbelievable. So, you know, in the words of Dr. King, everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Ms. Thomas, thank you for being great. We thank you for your service. And it is also very appropriate. It's a great segue to the honoring of Amari Jeffries and the work of the Parenting Journey, because really what you are demonstrating is the powerful love, not only of a strong, God-loving and fearing woman, but also of a mother. And not just a mother to your family, but to the community. And so we thank you for that. And so on the heels of Mother's Day and Father's Day, I wanted to honor the work of the Parenting Journey and the leadership and the stewardship of Amari Jeffries. Earlier this morning, many of us joined the mayor in Roxbury for coffee hours. And the children were playing and they were laughing, and I was remarking at how it was a glorious way to begin the day with the laughter of children. Very often when we talk about children, I think we think of them as independent contractors, but they are connected to a greater a network and community. And so in defending their childhood so that they can just be kids and laugh and have the freedom of what it means to be a child, that begins with strong communities, which foster and support and nurture strong families. Those strong families has everything to do with strong parents, which then raise up those strong children. So very often when we talk about our youth, we'll talk about education and how it is life's great equalizer. But I've always asserted that although education is life's great equalizer, family is life's great stabilizer. And our children need both. And so I just want to commend and uplift and recognize the work of the Parenting Journey. More than 52,000 parents have participated in their programming since they began in 2007. They have nearly 500 locations throughout the U.S. and can be found in communities throughout the Commonwealth as well as in New York, Washington, D.C., Florida, and many more. I want to invite Kevin up to say a little bit more about what the Parenting Journey does, and then I will begin the formal recognition of Amari Jeffries. Thank you. Or whoever wants to do it. Okay, well, okay. Okay. I'm just following my notes, y'all. Just following my notes. Okay, so what I will do then is just say a few things about Amari, and then he can talk about the Parenting Journey, and then we'll do a photo. Does that work? Okay. All right. So Amari Jeffries, his entire professional career has been in service to our country and community as a veteran, as a community organizer, and as a nonprofit leader. He has created countless initiatives to promote diversity and social change throughout our Commonwealth and in this city with his work from the Mass Service Alliance, Friends of the Children of Boston, and Boston Rising. He is a standout leader and steward for the Parenting Journey and contributes in countless ways to the organization's 36-year history of providing direct services dedicated to the uplifting of families. Mr. Paris Jeffries introduced the Parenting Journey's inaugural Social and Family Justice Fellowship, meant to empower families through the intersection of economic justice and parenting. Therefore, be it resolved that we as a body officially recognize and honor, I call you Amari. Do some people call you? Okay, all right. All right, Amari Paris Jeffries for his work on behalf of families in Greater Boston and throughout the country. And again, we just thank you for the role that you play in community and strengthening our families and supporting parents and creating healthier children and healthier communities. So thank you. All right.
I have had an opportunity to work with a lot of the counselors in the room because I've had a lot of jobs. So I'm either innovative or I can't keep a job. And so on good days, I say I'm innovative. On bad days, I can't keep a job. So thank you guys for having me here today. Thank you, City Council and President Campbell for honoring the work of Parenting Journey today. I would like to thank my longtime mentors, Robert Lewis Jr. and Hubie Jones, who have taught me that commitment to social justice is always the long road. I would like to thank the PJ team behind me, and especially our Parent Advisory Council, Erica Bronner and Kevin Gilnack, and our inaugural Social Justice Fellow, Counselor Tito Jackson, who are the architects and creators of our Parent Bill of Rights. Lastly, I'd like to thank Counselor Ayanna Pressley for the citation. It is an honor to be recognized by someone who has championed families throughout our city and throughout our Commonwealth. Counselor Pressley knows that parenting is not about being a person who takes care of the young or elderly, but it is about a family ecosystem where people ensure that economic security, safe families, and diversity is a value that's lived. I've had the opportunity to have my city, the City of Boston, parent me. My parent, the City of Boston, has provided me with economic security, giving me my first job. My parent, the City of Boston, has provided me a safe community by allowing me to buy a home in my neighborhood of Hyde Park. My parent, the City of Boston, has provided me diversity by allowing me to live, learn, and work with people of different races, gender, languages, education levels, and immigration status. Through this Parent Bill of Rights, we have the opportunity to participate in this family ecosystem. By now parenting our city, the City of Boston, we can ensure that our parent, this city, is thriving so that it can guarantee economic security, safe communities, and diversity to all of its children because Boston is a family. That should get a clap. I stopped for him, but this. Thank you, Councilor Pressley. and the Boston City Council for sharing this vision today. Thank you so much.
Would everyone join us for a photo, please? And then vote on the resolution a little bit later. Yeah. That one we got here.
Which that's
Right in the middle. Yes, star. Yes,
hot seat.
star. Right where it's got the- yeah.
I tried that channel might be you.
Oh,
There's so many cameras to look
not
at.
hardly. Best in the spot right in the middle. Okay.
I know, right?
I know.
PJ, take this way. And then right away.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Madam Clerk, if you could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councilor Sabi George is present. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made to the minutes of the last meeting, if there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objection, the minutes from the last council meeting are so approved. Madam Clerk, moving on to communications from Ms. Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 1075, message in order for your approval and ordinance amending City of Boston Code Ordinance, Chapter 14, Boston Jobs and Living Wage Ordinance, filed in the office of the City Clerk on July 6, 2018.
Docket 1075 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
I'll do 76.
Madam
and-
Clerk, if you could read dockets 1076 and 1077 together.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Docket number 1076, message in order approving an appropriation of $5,429,304 for the purpose of paying for the costs associated with window replacement projects at the John Marshall Elementary School, known as Up Academy. This includes projects at the payment of all costs and incidental or related thereto, and for which the City of Boston may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, known as the MSBA, and said amount to be expended under the direction of Public Facilities Department on behalf of the Boston Public Schools. Docket number 1077, message in order approving an appropriation of $600,000 for the purpose of paying for the costs of a feasibility study and schematic design work associated with projects at the following schools: the Rafael Hernandez School boiler replacement, Patrick Linden School boiler replacement, Donald McKay K-8 School boiler replacement, James Otis School window replacement, Josiah Quincy Elementary School boiler replacement, Snowden International School at Copley roof replacement, and the John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Science window replacement. This includes the payment of all incidental or related thereto, and for which the City of Boston may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, known as the MSBA, and said amount to be expended under the direction of the Public Facilities Department on behalf of the Boston Public Schools.
Dockets 1076 through 1077 will be placed in the Committee on Ways and Means. Madam Clerk, if we could read docket 1078 through 1080.
Thank you, Madam President. Message in order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $17,229,498 in the form of a grant from the federal FY 2018 Community Development Block Grant awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund housing preservation and production, home buyer and homeowner assistance programs, human services, fair housing, environmental abatement program, Main Streets, and business assistance programs. Docket number 1079, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $5,863,642 in the form of a grant for the FFY 18 Home Investment Partnership Program known as HOME, grant awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Department of Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund development of affordable rental and home ownership housing units. Docket number 1080, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant of $2,588,781 in the form of a grant for the FFY 18 Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, known as HOPWA, grant awarded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to be administered by the Neighborhood Development. The grant will fund housing-related services to persons with HIV/AIDS, primary to provide tenant-based rental assistance.
Dockets 1078 through 1080 will be assigned to the Committee on Housing and Community Development.
Docket number 1081, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant of $250,000 in the form of a grant from the Downtown Boston Business Improvement District known as BID, Public/Private Safety Initiative, awarded by the donor group to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund the purchase and installation of video cameras and related equipment in the downtown business area. The equipment will assist BPD with enhancing public safety and improving the quality of life in the downtown area. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 1081, at this time, as Vice Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, I'm going to seek suspension of the rules and passage of Docket 1081. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a grant from the Downtown Boston Business Improvement District Public Safety Initiative, going to fund installation of cameras that have already been discussed and agreements made in the downtown area. At this time, I seek suspension of the rules and passage of Docket 1081. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes, Councilor Presley? Okay. The ayes have it. Docket 1081 has been passed.
Docket number 1082, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $150,000 in the form of a grant for the CAN Share 2018/2019, awarded by the donor group to be administered by the Boston Center for Youth and Families. The grant will fund matching and support the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, Healthy Incentives Program, and the new Boston Double Up Food Buck Pilot Program through donations for an amount not to exceed $150,000. This funding will enable beneficiaries of these programs to double their buying power at Boston farmers markets and select neighborhood convenience stores, providing greater access to fresh food.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Self-explanatory for the most part. I rise to ask that we suspend the rules and accept and expend this grant for the Boston Center for Youth and Families today. This grant will fund matching and support the SNAP Healthy Incentives Program and the new Boston Double Up Food Buck Pilot Program. This funding will enable beneficiaries of these programs to double their buying power at Boston farmers markets and select neighborhood convenience stores, providing greater access to fresh and healthy foods. As the chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, I move to suspend the rules and to accept this grant today.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank you.
Presley. Councilor Presley, Chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of Docket 1082. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1082 has been passed.
Docket number 1083, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $100,000 in the form of a grant for the Efficiency and Regionalization Grant awarded by the Mass Department of Revenue to be administered by the Office of Economic Development. The grant will fund the Greater Boston Regional Economic Compact Cities to hire a consultant who will develop an action plan of operational project based on overlapping needs expressed in the municipality's community master plans.
Docket 1083 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Madam Clerk, if you could read docket 1084 and 1085 together?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 1084, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $90,000 in the form of a grant for the Community Gardens Grant awarded by TD Bank to be administered by the Mayor's Office. The grant will fund the activation of the community gardens and green spaces located in the City of Boston. Docket number 1085, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $25,000 in the form of a grant for Phase 2 of the Climate Ready Boston Initiative awarded by the Barr Foundation to be administered by the Environment Department. The grant will fund a set of community-level resilience strategies recommended by the Boston Green Ribbon Commission to address climate risk.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak on these two dockets. I'd request that docket 1084 remain in committee, and I would like to suspend the rules and pass docket 1085. This is a $25,000 grant for Phase 2 of the Climate Ready Boston Initiative. This has been awarded by the Barr Foundation and will essentially allow for some preliminary infrastructure development to deal with coastal flooding. As a coastal city that's in the grips of dealing with man-made climate change, it's pertinent that we get this adopted and funded as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. We will take them separate. So docket 1084 will be assigned to the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks. And then docket 1085, Councilor O'Malley, who is the chair of the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1085. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1085 has been passed.
Docket number 1086, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $13,607.50 in the form of a grant awarded by the Pipe Fitters Association, Local Union 537, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund the installation of 2 security cameras, one on Enterprise Street and one on Clapp Street.
At this time, as Vice Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, given the size of the grant and the fact that it already has planned use, which is to install these 2 cameras at these 2 predetermined locations, I seek suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1086. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1086 has been passed.
Docket number 1087, message in order to declare surplus city-owned former Public Works Department parcels of vacant land and the transfer of the care, custody, management, and control of said property to the Public Facilities Commission. The land located at 400 Frontage Road in South Boston, being Ward 8, parcel 01024040, 200 Frontage Road in South Boston, being Ward 8, parcel number 01024035, and Frontage Road in South Boston, being Ward 8, and parcels 01024036, 01024107, and 01024037.
Docket 1087 will be assigned to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Madam Clerk, moving on to reports of public officers and others. If we could read docket 1088 through 1089 together.
you.
Thank you.
Docket number 1088, notice is received from the mayor of the appointment of Cara Elliott Ortega as interim arts commissioner of the Office of Arts and Culture effective July 1st, 2018. And docket number 1089, communication was received from Gail Willett, assessing commissioner, of the appointment of Julie Castor as an assistant assessor.
Docket 1088 and 1089 will be placed on file.
Docket number 1090, the constable bonds of Bara Mohammed and Charles MBA and Carmen Rivera, having duly approved by the collector-treasurer, were received.
At this time, the chair seeks approval of docket 1090 under the usual terms and conditions. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1090 has been approved under the usual terms and conditions. Moving on to reports of committees. Madam Clerk, if we could read docket 0713 through 0715.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 0713, the Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events, to which was referred on May 9th, 2018, docket number 0713. Message and order authorizing the Office of Culture, Arts and Culture to accept and expend a grant from the Boston Redevelopment Authority. The grant of $332,330 will fund the Boston Artists in Resident programming throughout the city. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. Docket number 0714, the Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events, to which was referred on May 9th, 2018, docket number 0714. Message and order authorizing the Office of Arts and Culture to accept and expend a grant from the Boston Redevelopment Authority. The grant of $235,011 will fund the Boston Cultural Council grants to individual artists, submits a report recommending the order ought to pass. And docket number 0715, the Committee on Arts and Culture and Special Events, to which was referred on May 9th, 2018, docket number 0715, message and order authorizing the Office of Arts and Culture to accept and expend a grant from the Boston Redevelopment Authority. The grant of $123,011 will fund the Boston Artists Resource Manager as a single point of contact for creative people seeking information about issues that include permitting, licensing, affordable housing, and financial literacy. Submits a report recommending the order ought to pass.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events held a public hearing on June 28th, which seems like, I don't know, 2 years ago. I think it was just 2 weeks ago. Right here in the chamber, we took testimony. These matters were referred by the mayor on May 9th. At that particular hearing on the 28th, we heard from Chief Julie Burrows. I think this was her last city council hearing with us. We also got to meet Cara Elliott Ortega, the interim. We also had other members of the team. We reviewed docket 0713, which was the grant that would fund Boston artists and residents throughout the city. Docket 0714 was for the Boston Cultural Council grants and that would go to individual artists. And then 0715 would just provide a position to really be that point of contact to help creative people who need to help navigate the system. At this hearing, we talked about planning, evaluation, implementation of new programs and initiatives through the mayor's office, talked about the investments and how these investments help our city. And this, I think is particularly important given what has been happening over the last couple of months with some of the challenges we have with some of our artists being forced to leave their studios. So it's important that we keep these investments and that we keep making Boston a city that attracts new artists and really supports the artists that are here. But based on all the testimony and the information presented at the hearing, I ask and recommend that these matters ought to pass. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a quick recess.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. We were just making sure that everyone had a copy of the committee report that she was referencing. Those are being handed out now. I think some got it and some did not. So at this time, Councilor Janey, Councilor Janey, who is the chair of the Committee on Arts, Culture, and Special Events, recommends acceptance of the committee report and passage of dockets 0713, 0714, and 0715. I will take each one separately for just a matter of record. For docket 0713, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0713 has been passed. For docket 0714, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0714 has been passed. And for docket 0715, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0715 has been passed. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 0240, order for hearing to explore voting rights for immigrants with legal status and other inclusive practices.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This matter was sponsored by you, Council President Agenda Ray Campbell, referred to the Committee on Government Operations on January 31st of 2018. We held a public hearing last night, Tuesday, July 10th. This hearing discussed both the possibility of allowing immigrants with legal status to vote in municipal elections, as well as other inclusive practices. To reiterate, there is currently no proposed legislation on the table, but we did hear a lot of valuable testimony from panel members, as well as public testimony. I encourage those councilors who could not make it to take an opportunity to watch the tape in its entirety and to review all the written materials that were submitted. The first panel included testimony from Chief of Health and Human Services, Marty Martinez, Elections Department Commissioner Dion Irish, and Director of the Mayor's Offices of Immigrant Advancement, Alejandra St. Gian. The second panel included testimony from Jeff Gross, Political Consultant, World Education Services Global Talent Bridge, Caroline Sherrod, Legislative Director for State Representative Byron Rushing, Jesse Carpenter from the Clerk's Office of the City of Tacoma Park, Maryland, where we heard about their experience and their process that allows non-citizens to vote. We also heard from George Pillsbury for a nonprofit vote and got some compelling testimony from Veronica Serrato, who's the attorney and executive director of the Project Citizenship, talking about the significant risks that one may run when allowing non-citizens to vote in the event that they vote when they're not supposed to. They're barred from gaining citizenship forever, which is a pretty significant risk that she wanted to highlight. So that matter is staying in committee, but through the chair, I'll put it over to the chair if she has any, in the lead sponsor, if she has any further comments. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Flaherty. And thank you also to the councilors who came, including Councilor Zakem, Councilor Presley, Councilor Janey, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Edwards, and I know Councilor Sabi George and Councilor McCarthy also sent letters. So thank you. I think we demonstrated that even for what was, I guess, a controversial issue, that we can have a conversation and dialogue amongst one another about issues that are controversial and do it in a respectful way and still admire each other for the work that we do. I do think it's a conversation worth continuing, and I definitely will. It was a great conversation and a great, the two panels were excellent. And the whole point of doing it was to make sure that we had perspectives from both sides. And I think that was adequately represented yesterday, including a woman who was a clerk from a county in Maryland that currently allows this, but also women who talked about the risk of doing something like this. If someone makes a mistake, for example, if we allow this and say they're allowed to vote in Boston, but then they go and vote in Cambridge, they run the risk of actually forfeiting their right to become a permanent U.S. citizen or becoming a U.S. citizen. What sparked this, as many know, is that given what's happening in Washington, not just children being taken away from their families, but now people who are serving in the military being abruptly discharged for no apparent reason because they are possibly immigrants. I said I'm sort of done going to rallies and marches and sending resolutions to Washington, and I wanted to have a conversation that looked at all of the things we could be doing at the local level with the authority that we have. And so this included many things, including the possibility of voting. And why did we include a conversation on voting? Because it's happening in other places in the country. And so why not have the conversation here in the city of Boston? And it's also been a conversation that folks in the immigrant space and other advocates have been having as well. And we will continue to talk about the possibility of doing it. Just for clarification purposes, I feel like I've been giving history lessons as of late. The U.S. Constitution does not prohibit this. The state constitution here does, and so hence the conversation about whether or not we're going to do this involves state law, not the U.S. Constitution. We're not talking about folks voting in a federal or state election. This is truly folks at the local level, and we're talking about folks who are currently living in the city of Boston legally, and those who have been living here for years, maybe even decades, who have jobs here, who pay taxes here, who go to our schools, who own businesses, and who contribute in meaningful ways, who serve in the military and die sometimes on behalf of this country. So it's a conversation I think was worth having. And if anything, I think we learned that if we want this city to feel inclusive for everybody, that we're going to have to take on some tough conversations, because there were folks who were appalled at the idea of us just having the conversation, which was really troubling in a lot of ways. But I'm not afraid of having conversations. I'm going to keep forging ahead. But I do want to thank my colleagues for their input. I also want to thank Councilor Flaherty for running a great campaign, and my Chief of Staff, Ellie, for doing a lot of the coordination. We'll continue the conversation. Say again, what did I say?
Campaign.
Oh, I don't know why I said that. Councilor Flaherty, thank you. As I was rushing out to thank Ellie. But thank you, Councilor Flaherty. And thank you, Ellie, from my office for coordinating the terrific panels. This is something that I think still requires some serious consideration. And I look forward to talking with many folks in the community and getting out in the community to have more conversations about it. So thank you, Councilor Flaherty. At this time, docket 0240 will remain in the Committee on Government Operations. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Would you like them to do
If-
docket 91 and 92?
Councilor Baker? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Docket 1091, Councilor Baker offered the following resolution designating a hero square at Edison Green Street and Pond Street in honor of Second Lieutenant Warren Francis Ames. And docket number 1092, Councilor Baker offered the following resolution designating Hero Square at the intersection of Bellevue Street and Kane Street in honor of Sergeant Victor Gemelli.
Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I ask to suspend and pass, or do we suspend and adopt here?
Suspend and adopt.
Okay, I'd like to
Yep.
read, just briefly so we can revisit Lieutenant Warren Ames and Victor Gemelli. Warren Francis Ames was born in Boston, October 20th, 1924. As a resident of Dorchester, Warren was inducted into the United States Army Air Force on April 26, 1943, and began active duty that same day. Warren served as second lieutenant with the 449th Bomber Group Heavy in the 716th Bomber Squadron. On March 2nd, 1946, Warren was declared missing and presumed dead over Hungary. For the heroism displayed in his service to our country, Warren was awarded the Air Medal, Purple Heart, and American Campaign Medal, and the World War II Victory Medal. Warren was survived by his parents, Margaret Donovan and Henry F. Ames, and is memorialized on tablets of the missing in the Florence American Cemetery in Florence, Italy. And Victor Gemelli. Victor Gemelli was born on March 17, 1905 in Boston, Mass. As a resident of Dorchester, Victor was inducted into the Army on February 20th, 1941, and began active duty that same day. Victor served as sergeant with the Army. On October 21st, 1944, Victor Gemelli was killed in action in Germany. For his heroism displayed in his service to our country, Victor was awarded the American Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal, and the Purple Heart. Victor was survived by his parents, John and Angelina Gemelli, who were residents of Dorchester. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor Baker. At this time, Counselor Baker seeks suspension of the rules and passage, sorry, you're so right. Before I get there, anyone else looking to speak on this matter? Okay. Oh, Counselor Sabi George, you want to speak? No. Madam Clerk, if you could add Counselor Siomo, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Sabi George, Counselor Flaherty, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Janey, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Presley, Counselor Wu, Counselor Zachem, as well as the Chair. And I'm assuming that everyone wants to be added to both docket 1091 and 1092. Thank you. At this time, Counselor Baker seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1091. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1091 has been adopted. Counselor Baker also seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1092. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1092 has been adopted.
Docket number 1093, Council Siomo offers the following resolution designating a hero square at Royce Road and Commonwealth Ave in honor of Private First Class John McDonald.
Councilor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to ask for suspension and adoption as well. Private First Class John McDonald was recently returned from, his remains were returned to be buried at the National Cemetery in Bourne after 74 years of being missing in action. He lied about his age. He was 16 when he entered the Marines. He died in his first day of battle of Tarawa in Japan. He was killed on November 20th, 1943. His remains were not identified and returned to his family until 74 years later. He was an Alston resident. He grew up on Royce Road. Private First Class John McDonald was finally laid to rest at Massachusetts National Cemetery, and we want to designate the intersection of Royce Road and Commonwealth Ave as Private First Class John McDonald Hero Square. So I ask suspension and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Presley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zachem, as well as the Chair. At this time, Councilor Siomo seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1093. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1093 has been passed.
Docket number 1094, Councilors Edwards and Flynn offer the following ordinance regarding repayment of back taxes.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you. This ordinance is a follow-up to the hearing that we had on May 31st with regards to back taxes and Bostonians who owe the city of Boston some money. This is an attempt, as we learned in that hearing, to help people who are currently in tax purgatory get right with the city. As we learned, 10,000 Bostonians on an annual basis are actually fall behind in their taxes. 1,600 liens on average are actually put out, and of them, several hundred foreclosure processes are started. The city expressed and testified, and I wanted to thank the city for coming to testify and give us a lot of this information, that they wanted to learn from other cities. And so in that process, we put in the due diligence and called up other cities such as Springfield and New Bedford, who both have adopted this, and both have noted that this has been a wonderful program for their cities, and they've actually helped people get right with their cities. And even when the person couldn't maintain the payment program, they were at least closer in terms of their debt that is owed to the city than they were when they were just left with no other plan. See, right now in Boston, we actually do offer a lot of help to people who owe taxes in terms of, or excuse me, for future taxes only. So that if you're a senior, you can work off your tax, bill here. If you're a senior, for example, you can also defer your taxes if you're over 65 years old. But if you're a senior who owes taxes, as in before your 65th birthday, you happen to owe some taxes, or if you're anybody else actually in the city of Boston, we have one program, and that requires a 25% down payment and 1 year to pay it all off. 1 year to pay off all the back taxes that you owe the city of Boston. That's the only program we offer. Thank goodness the state has offered us an opt-in provision that we as a city council can adopt and simply allow for a payment plan for residents and also commercial entities. So the proposed ordinance right now does two things. For those who are residents who have fallen behind in your taxes, I'm proposing a 3-year payment plan option. And for those who are low income, active military duty, veterans, and for our seniors over 60, I'm proposing that can go as high as 5 years and also forgiving 50% of the interest that you owe. By the way, on that 1-year tax plan, the interest rate is 16%. So this would offer an opportunity to lower that. This also offers an opportunity for commercial entities that would allow them up to 2 years, actually, to pay back their taxes if they owe anything in terms of taxes to the city of Boston. In addition to that, if they wanted to qualify for the 50% interest forgiveness, they can do one of three things. One is if they have a brownfield or an environmental toxic place, they can clean it up. If they own a residential, or excuse me, an investment property that they are not living in, they can rent 50% of those units for below market, helping to keep people in their homes. And if they happen to own a commercial entity that they're renting out to small businesses, they can also rent that out to a local business for below market rate to keep our businesses there. Now, these numbers I've come up with and these suggestions for how that people can make right with the city, well, that's the point of this body. I want your feedback. I want your knowledge. And I think that while the numbers may change and what we think the entities could do best by the city of Boston to get to the 50% tax forgiveness, that's really not the point. The point is that we're moving towards a direction of providing tax relief for a lot of Bostonians who are currently in tax purgatory and don't know what to do. Many of them are our seniors who, again, are house rich, cash poor, and while the city may not pursue them, they're still stuck in this situation where they owe back taxes and they really don't know what they're going to do. This is a tax payment plan. I'm looking forward to also introducing a home rule petition later on this year or possibly the following year that would reduce that 25% requirement. That is state law. There's nothing we can do right now short of having the home rule petition, but the two combined would provide a great deal of relief for a lot of Bostonians. So so any other questions? You know where to find me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you to Councilor Edwards for your leadership on this issue, and thank you to the Mayor's office as well. As Councilor Edwards stated, many seniors, people with disabilities, low-income families, veterans across the city have expressed concerns about being able to afford to continue staying in their homes. They find that their homes have grown in great value and struggle to keep up with property tax. This act will work to allow qualifying residential taxpayers up to 3 years to repay outstanding taxes. We need to ensure longtime residents have the ability to stay in their homes in their neighborhoods, and I just wanted to thank Councilor Edwards for her leadership on this issue. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. At this time, does anyone want to speak on this matter? Add your name. You want to speak?
Just to
Councilor
commend,
Janey?
yeah, I'm sorry.
You have the
Madam
floor. Go ahead.
President, just wanted to commend Councilor Edwards and Councilor Flynn for your leadership on this. This is a huge issue. I hear stories from residents, I don't know how often, on this issue. There's one resident in particular who is currently struggling and there's no relief. And, you know, this is a huge challenge, I think, particularly as neighborhoods are gentrifying. And we have the house rich, cash poor. So many folks in communities of color, low-income communities, certainly our elderly, disabled. It's a huge issue. And so I want to commend you guys and just add my name, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Suomo, you have the floor.
Thank you. I chaired the hearing with Councilor Edwards, and one thing that came out of that for me was several years ago, Councilor Linehan, Councilor Murphy, and I got a home rule petition passed to lower the eligible age for tax deferral from 65 to 55. I'm unsure if that ever went anywhere, so we need to find out because it's not reflected as a program offered by assessing. The tax deferral program works if you apply is you don't have to pay your taxes, a 4% interest rate is applied, and then they can be satisfied upon death and liquidation of the asset. I personally think that's a way better way to help seniors. And at that hearing, they brought in an elderly man who owed $400 on his tax bill. So he's like one quarterly payment in arrears, and he wanted to go into he wanted access to a program that he'd have to pay 25% down, 25% interest, which is confiscatory. So I would just say, I wanted to put that out there so you know that we've been working on something similar to this that I think works better. In fact, I asked the assessor to see if we could actually lower the interest from 4%. I think Newton offers a 1 or 2% going forward. Much better program. Just wanted to put that out there for everybody's knowledge. Thank you.
Would you like to add your name?
No, thanks.
Okay. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Janey's name. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Presley, Councilor Wu, as well as the chair. Docket 1094 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 1095, Councilors Zachem and Presley offer the following order: to adopt a discrimination, harassment, and retaliation policy for City Council employees.
Councilor Zachem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to start by thanking my good colleague, Councilor Presley, for working together on this, as well as our respective staffs who did quite a bit of research on what is effective and appropriate policy from HR, working with HR here in the City of Boston and looking at practices in legislatures and government bodies around the country to address issues of workplace harassment, discrimination, for people here in City Council. You know, as we had a working session that was quite well attended by our colleagues, and I want to thank everyone for participating, to develop a system that makes sure that people who work here, who visit here, whether they're advocates, lobbyists, residents, staff, employees, interns, or counselors themselves, feel safe and protected every day, and that we have policies in place to both make sure we're going to be proactive about responding to complaints of harassment or retaliation, but also instituting training for employees, and that includes the members of this body, should we adopt this policy, on best practices on how to recognize and how to address issues of harassment, and also making sure that this is not a one-size-fits-all approach, that this proposed policy offers a range of measures that can be taken when harassment is reported, both that respects, if it's so desired, the confidentiality of the alleged victim, as well as making sure that appropriate measures are put in place with strict timelines, strict reporting requirements, and designated staff members both here in City Council and in the larger HR department. So I look forward to continuing this discussion, and this is the proposal that we have come out of the committee process, out of the working session, but look forward to discussing further with our colleagues and hopefully adopting and putting this in place to make sure, as we always do, that Boston is a leader in the field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Zachem. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And to your point earlier in the week regarding real, substantive, and tangible ways to support immigrants in the City of Boston, I think on the issue of sexual harassment, what is encouraging about this is that this is something real and tangible that we can do, in addition to the statements of solidarity that we've offered here in the wake of national movements with an elevated consciousness around this issue. So I want to thank Councilor Zachem for his leadership and partnership on this policy. I want to thank my research director, Lenise Wallace, in my office for all of her efforts, and each and every one of you for your participation in the working session, for your critical input and feedback. This is truly a watershed moment in industries and workplaces across the nation as we raise awareness about hostile work environments and the issue of sexual harassment. I am thrilled and proud that this new policy will not only set the temperature within the Boston City Council, but it will reinforce that the council will not tolerate harassment in any form to its employees or by its employees. This includes paid and unpaid staff, which was something that came up in the working session, the need for us to include in this policy interns. And recognizing the obvious power structures that underpin a majority of sexual harassment cases, we have opted intentionally to include council members in this policy as well. In order to make systemic change that deters bad behavior and protects everyone, we need to be intentional in ending the abuse of power that too often takes place in workplaces, including the halls of government. Every workplace, including this one, should lead with clear principles and institute policies that support them. This policy, the first of its kind for the Boston City Council, will make clear the steps taken in the event of harassment or discrimination if an incident occurs. It mandates training, establishes a chain of reporting, highlights various forms of harassment, including cyber and digital abuse, sets deadlines, protects privacy, prohibits retaliation, and makes clear that termination will be the result of any allegation that is found to be true. It also specifies an annual review of the policy to ensure that we are doing everything we can to prevent harassment or misconduct for our employees, both in and outside of City Hall. So again, I thank Councilor Zakem for his leadership and partnership on this, all of you for your critical input and feedback, and move to act on this. Excited to see something codified. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor Zakem and Councilor Presley, thank you very much for your leadership on this, the hard work that your team members also put in, and thank you to the colleagues for their input as well and participation in the working sessions. Thank you. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Siomo, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, as well as the chair. At this time, docket 1095 would be assigned to the Committee on Rules.
Docket number 1096, Councilor Wu offered the following order for a hearing regarding local wetlands protection legislation.
Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This comes out of the hearing that we had a few months ago about flooding in Boston and the extent of the risk that neighborhoods across the city are subject to. I want to especially thank one of my policy fellows, David, for doing incredible work and researching and talking to a whole bunch of folks on this. And today, this is just a hearing order to discuss a potential ordinance around local wetlands protection. Boston has 209 wetlands areas in the city, totaling almost 350 acres, plus another 1,300 plus acres subject to coastal storm flowage. What that means is that we are uniquely vulnerable to climate change from a number of different angles of flooding. And every single one of the city council districts represented by colleagues here has these areas within them. And so we think about the coast, and particularly Councilor Baker's district and Councilor Edwards and Councilor Flynn's, but really inland as well, there are significant, whether it's the river or different bodies of water that can overflow and flood. So even though every city council district is affected by wetlands, Boston is only one of 3 coastal municipalities in Massachusetts that doesn't have an additional layer of local legislation protecting these wetlands. What it would do is enable the Conservation Commission to put some teeth into how they're thinking about development, how they're thinking about our ability to require green infrastructure or set some of the terms of what is developed. So there's a range of where this could go in terms of what stipulations we would put in there. and several agencies within the city are already working hard on this. So this will be a matter of coordination and bringing everyone to the table to talk about what we are aiming for and how local legislation could put additional teeth into the state's requirements, which have some gray areas that leave it open for risk from climate change. So the key question would be whether the city can set new definitions for climate change related projects under the state's Wetlands Protection Act. And I encourage everyone to weigh in. Again, we are always trying to balance how to remain a thriving, developing, bustling city that is very attractive for people to live in, to do business in, but that against the very real, immediate, and extremely urgent threat of climate change. I think we need to err more on the side of joining all of those 190 municipalities that have already enacted this type of legislation and make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Wu. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter, add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Baker, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Presley, Councilor Zakhem, as well as the Chair. Docket 1096 will be assigned to the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks.
Docket number 1097, Councilor Presley offered the following resolution endorsing Parenting Journeys Parents' Bill of Rights.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We learned earlier today, well, reintroduced to some and introduced for the first time to others the work of the Parenting Journey. They have actually established a Parents' Bill of Rights, which we're looking for this body to endorse. We have also been promoting this on our social media platforms, urging people to sign it, and I just wanted to share it with you. The pledge in support of the Parents' Bill of Rights that I'm asking us to suspend and pass today. Based on the staggering impact the systemic barriers of oppression have had on families, particularly for immigrants, people of color, people in recovery, and people living in high poverty communities, and our parents' lived experiences, the Parent Advisory Council for a Parenting Journey established the Parents' Bill of Rights. This platform will guide and inform our advocacy efforts as we seek greater opportunities for all families. And I'll read it quickly. Parents' Bill of Rights. We as parents and caregivers deserve to raise our children in vibrant communities. We all deserve to live in a vibrant community where we are safe, to access nutritious and affordable food in our community, to live in an affordable home that meets livable standards, and to send our children to safe, high-quality schools in our neighborhoods. We as parents and caregivers deserve the ability to support our families. We all deserve paid time off to care for a new child or sick family member, comprehensive health care that is affordable for our whole family and includes mental health care, substance abuse treatment and prevention services, and reproductive health care, high quality and affordable child care, and living wages. And finally, we as parents and caregivers deserve to raise our children with the culture and values that reflect our diversity. We all deserve comprehensive immigration families that keep comprehensive immigration policies that keep families together, and family-centered policies that prevent discrimination based on sexuality, gender, race, or socioeconomic status. And I move to suspend and pass.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? Add the name. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Janey, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakhem, Councilor Siomo, as well as the Chair, Councilor Flaherty. At this time, Councilor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1097. Oh, can you also add Councilor Flynn? And Councilor Baker? Councilor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1097. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1097 has been adopted.
Docket number 1098, Councilor Presley offered the following resolution urging passage of Senate Bill 2260, an act negating archaic statutes targeting young women.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Sorry, y'all. I feel like I'm filibustering a little bit, but busy meeting and into the session here. So once again, I want to thank my research director, Lenise Wallace, as well as one of our summer policy interns, Deep, in my office, for helping to draft this resolution, as well as our partners at NARAL Pro-Choice Massachusetts for the work that they do every day to protect women's reproductive freedom and medical decisions when it comes to autonomy over our bodies. Today, I ask all of you to join me in supporting this resolution to urge the Massachusetts State Legislature and Governor Charlie Baker to pass and sign into law the Nasty Women Act. This has already passed the Senate. This bill is sponsored by Acting Senate President Harriet Chandler and long has been championed by State Representative Byron Rushing. This will repeal draconian laws that are on the books in Massachusetts. For those of you that are unaware, prior to the passage of Roe v. Wade, we did have a law on the book banning abortion. That draconian and archaic law is still on the books. And given the current climate and what is happening and the potential of what could happen, the Nasty Women Act is legislation moving for us to repeal this archaic law and to remove it from our books. Just to do it anyway, but certainly in light of the threat that could happen. Again, this became unconstitutional 45 years ago with the transformative and landmark ruling in Roe v. Wade. For decades, Roe v. Wade has provided access to safe and legal abortions, saving many lives and allowing women from all backgrounds to participate more fully in society. And though many believe abortion to be settled law, many low-income immigrant and women of color still face challenges to receiving safe abortion care due to restrictive laws like the Hyde Amendment and disinformation from crisis pregnancy centers, which was just recently held up by our Supreme Court. Should Roe v. Wade be overturned and the threat is real or otherwise gutted, without action at the state level, the archaic statutes in Massachusetts could be used against abortion providers by prosecutors to infringe on the right to choose. The fact is, 2/3 of the American public do not want to see Roe v. Wade overturned, and that includes the majority of both men and women, 65% and 68% respectively, to be exact. Overall, the abortion rate is decreasing in the U.S., and still, about half of all pregnancies in the U.S. each year are unplanned, and almost 1/3 of women will have an abortion in their lifetime, highlighting perhaps the importance of ready access to safe abortion. So here we are at a crossroads, and with Justice Kennedy having retired and the successor of Brett Kavanaugh, if this happens, will certainly this near certainty upend a delicate pro-choice majority on the court and change its character for generation or more as future cases on the economy, voting rights, the environment, and the basic ground rules of our politics are being decided. So Massachusetts has a choice to make. So let's prove to the country that women's rights to self-determination and access to safe, competent reproductive health care is not up for debate here in Massachusetts, that we will not compromise when it comes to women's autonomy over their own bodies. And I move to suspend and pass.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank our good colleague, Councilor Presley, for bringing this forward and for speaking so eloquently on it and on the risks and on the timeliness of this. So many of the battles that I think we thought had been fought and won over the last generation or two or three now are at risk of being undone, with President Trump in Washington having the ability to appoint a second Supreme Court justice, whether it's his current nominee who is confirmed or someone else down the road. I think it's quite clear we do have someone who will be seeking to overturn Roe versus Wade, along with a host of other important rulings and protections for people across the United States. Unfortunately, there's little we can do in this body or in the Commonwealth to prevent that, because we have such able and dedicated federal representatives, both in the Senate and the House, fighting those battles for us in Washington. But what we can do is make sure that here in Massachusetts, we are going to update our laws. We are going to make these changes that for so long people have said they're not necessary, because Roe v. Wade is the law of the land, because we have these federal protections. But they are at risk. So I want to add my name. I want to thank Councilor Presley for bringing this forward, because it is important. It is incredibly important that we stand up yet again in the face of retrograde movements coming out of Washington. things that can set us back, that are going to affect the health of everyone in our communities, that have the ability to say, to make healthcare decisions for others, which we should not be having here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I look forward to supporting this. Please add my name, and I think it's unfortunate that we have to do this once again, this sort of action based on what's happening in Washington, but we will, and we will continue to do that, and I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zakhem. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Janey's name, Councillor Siomo, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Asabi George, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Wu, Councillor Zakhem, as well as the Chair, and Councillor Flaherty. All those, Councillor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1098. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1098 has been passed.
Docket number 1099. Councilors Presley and Asabi George offer the following resolution urging passage of Senate Bill 257 and House Bill 2796, an act for providing immediate child care assistance to homeless families.
Councillor Presley, you have the floor.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to my friend, Councilor Asabi George, for her leadership and support on this. You may recall that the women councilors a year ago did a series of hearings and listening sessions to better understand what we could do to improve quality access and affordability of childcare. And one of the things that became glaringly obvious as we were in community and listening and learning is that we need to provide child care assistance to those families that are experiencing homelessness. Currently, there are 1,123 families experiencing homelessness in Boston. They do not have access to child care. And it is critical in order for them to get on a pathway to upward mobility. They need to be able to secure jobs, to participate in workforce development and training. And the fact that they don't have access to child care prohibits this upward mobility and is contributing to their cycle of oppression. If this bill is passed, it would deem families residing in a temporary shelter, including but not limited to congregate motel, co-sheltering, or scattered site shelters provided by various state departments, they would qualify for subsidized full-time child care for a minimum of 6 months while residing in said shelter. This could really be game-changing. Again, we as a body continue to stand in solidarity on so many issues. I hope we can add this to the list. No child or family should be held back from achieving upward mobility and success because of institutional roadblocks that threaten their way. None of these families, I mean, the stories were heartbreaking, are looking for a hand out. They're simply looking for a hand up. Many of them are in school, in workforce development training, or have gone through apprentice programs and have jobs that they can't even take on simply because they do not have access to child care while living in shelter. So again, I thank Councilor Asabi George for co-sponsoring this resolution with me. I thank her for her leadership in this space and her role as chair on the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery. And of course, we thank our State House colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Presley. Councillor Asabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Councillor Presley, for your leadership on this important issue. We've been here before. We've discussed this before. It's so important that we create child care opportunities that are so easy for our families experiencing homelessness to access. We do know that there are almost 4,000 students in the Boston Public Schools that are experiencing homelessness. I talk about it too much because it's still a challenge, it's still a problem. But that number doesn't include younger siblings that are at home who are part of families that are in need for better access to and quicker access to child care and high quality early ed programs. This resolution will echo and I think elevate the voice of those working on this issue on the state level to create that better access, and hopes that we can support these families that are in a moment of crisis and a time of chaos where we should be supporting them the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asabi George. Councillor Presley.
I apologize, Madam President. I was just remiss. I just wanted to applaud and recognize another summer policy intern, Caitlin Bush, for all of her good work in drafting this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could add Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Baker, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Janey, Counselor Wu, Counselor Zachem, as well as the Chair. At this time, Counselor Presley and Counselor Asabi George seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1099. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1099 has been adopted.
Docket number 1100, Councilor Flaherty offers the following order for hearing regarding the retirement age of Boston police officers.
Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move for substitution this time to add Councilor Flynn as a co-sponsor, and anyone else who wishes to add their name can do so.
Any objection to adding Counselor Flynn as a co-sponsor? He is so added.
Thank you. Back in
ahead, Councilor Flaherty.
2014, with the support of this body, we passed a home rule petition that I had sponsored to allow the early retirement or early retired Boston police officers the ability to perform paid detail work as requested by private contractors throughout the city, because so many details go unmanned or unfilled each and every day, where they would give us an additional 200 to 300 officers, trained officers, experienced officers, yet retired, but serving in a capacity as a detail officer. We also, prior to that, this body, through home rule that I had sponsored, expanded the age, the maximum age that you could actually serve as a police officer. It used to be age 32. We moved it to age 40, giving the training and the experience, the life experience of those individuals and allowing them to participate. What I'm now presenting is a hearing to explore the possibility of increasing the retirement age for police officers within our city's police department. As we've seen, police officers gain significant training and experience, along with developing key relationships and familiarity with the communities that they serve throughout our city. It's also been an integral part of our community policing efforts, which is the model across the country. For many of our officers, they continue to have the mental and physical capabilities to continue to serve beyond the required retirement age, which is right now, it's age 65. Lastly, while we have a conversation with respect to recruitment efforts around diversity on our police department, I'd like to acknowledge that there's also a need to retain that talent and that experience, as well as that diversity. It's vital to community policing and maintaining a diverse department. So I'd like an opportunity to look at the data. It's really something that came out of the Ways and Means budget hearings when we spoke to our police commissioner and the police department. So it'd be a great opportunity to have a discussion with the administration. Let's talk to our police commissioner. Let's also bring in members of the BPPA, members of the superior officers, members of the detectives association, so that we could get some input from them. But and I'm not quite sure what the ideal retirement age is. I can just tell you that I don't think it should be 65 in 2018. Should it be 67? Should it be 69? Should it be 70? So I think that's really what we should have for discussion. And also, there's going to be real data with respect to cost of the city and pension issues, et cetera. So we also want to engage our CFO on this issue as well. So through the chair, turn it over to Councilor Flynn if he has any additional thoughts, and urge my colleagues to sign on. I think it's worthwhile as we continue to try to find ways to retain the talent that we have in the police department and also expand those opportunities. There are going to be some that probably going to want no part of this, that they've reached the maximum capacity, and at age 65 they want to retire and become snowbirds, and with all due respect, they've earned it. But there are a lot of men and women that I know on the department I served with when I was an assistant district attorney that are currently almost approaching retirement age, and they're having mixed emotions about it. They know that they would love to continue to serve and to stay, but they don't have that capacity because age 65 is mandatory retirement, and I think we may want to move that number north. I just don't know what that number is, and I think that's why it's worth the discussion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilor Flaherty for his leadership on this. I'm glad to co-sponsor with Councilor Flaherty. I do think 65 might be too young, and I think there's a lot of people that are in their 60s that are still able to make a meaningful contribution to our city. They've worked for the police, they've worked for the various city departments for many years. They know the city, they know the neighborhoods, they know the people, they understand the culture of Boston, and I think they have a lot of institutional knowledge that would really like to keep on serving in the city. So I just want want to say thank you to Council Flaherty for his leadership on this issue. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter? Add their name. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Presley, Councilor Zakam, Councilor Wu. At this time, Madam Clerk, docket 1100 will be placed in the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice.
Thank you. Docket number 1101, Councilor Campbell offered the following order for hearing to review the Boston Police Department's body-worn camera pilot program final study results.
You're up. Chair recognizes Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Siamo. Just quickly, this is an order for a hearing to review a report that has just come out, which is the final report that we were expecting and waiting for on the body camera pilot program. I had a hearing before and had a hearing order filed before on the preliminary study. This is to review the final study. And as we all know, $2 million was just put into our recent budget for a rollout of the body camera program on a permanent basis. So this conversation, I hope to also include, or I hope the discussion will also include the rollout of that program and the implementation of that program. What units, when, what are all the details and logistics? And frankly, the department was waiting until we got this report. So look forward to everyone being a part of the conversation as we continue the dialogue on body cameras and technology generally that not only serve our officers but also the community and have been proven to improve relations between the two. Thank you, Councilor Siamo.
Thank you. Docket 1101.
Oh, wait, people.
Oh, sorry. Please add Councilor Janey's name, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Presley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakam, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Baker, and the chair as well. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please place docket 1101 in public safety.
And criminal justice. Thank you, Councilor Siamo. At this time, we're going to move on to personnel orders.
Docket number 1102, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Edwards.
Councilor Edwards seeks suspension of the rules and in passage of docket 1102. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1102 has been passed. I am informed by the clerk that there are 3 late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to the agenda. Seeing and hearing no objection, they will be added. Do you guys have the 3 late file matters? Okay, so we'll take a brief recess while you get the 3rd one. So those are coming around, but we'll start with the ones that folks have just to keep the meeting going. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first late file matter, which is a letter from Councilor McCarthy.
From the office of Timothy P. McCarthy, Boston City Council, District 5, July 11th. Dear Clerk Feeney, please be advised that Councilor McCarthy will be absent from the City Council meeting on July 11th, 2018. He is out of the country for family reunion. Sincerely, Timothy McCarthy, City Council, District 5.
The first late file matter will be placed on file. Moving on to the second lay file matter, which is the order. You want to do the,
So, do you want me to just,
I would read, yeah, that's right.
thank you. I'll just do
She's going to
first.
formally add.
Okay. Offered by Councilors Michelle Wu and Kim Janey. Order regarding a text amendment for the Boston zoning code, whereas small businesses and locally owned businesses contribute to the economic and social vitality of neighborhoods throughout the city of Boston. Therefore, be it ordered that the Boston City Council by and through Councilors Michelle Wu, Kim Janey, submits a petition to amend the text of the Boston zoning code as established under Chapter 665 of the Acts of 1956, as amended to establish formula retail uses. Filed in the council July 11th, 2018.
Council Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk and Madam President. I'd like to move to suspend Rule 12 and add Councilor Edwards to the sponsorship list.
Awesome. Any objection to adding Councilor Edwards as a third co-sponsor? Councilor Edwards is added. Thank you, Councilor Wu.
Thank you very much. So this zoning text amendment is a proposal that would give communities a voice when chain stores are looking to open up in our neighborhood business districts. I want to recognize that there are many, many other people that I wish we could go beyond 3 co-sponsors with this for. Councilor McCarthy had been really instrumental in speaking up when the Petco located in Roslindale. Councilor Sabi George has had hearings on this topic when she was chairing the committee that has led transformed into Councilor Janey's now committee. And just as recently as a couple months ago, President Campbell was championing a community voice in as-of-right developments, as we were seeing with Popeyes in Codman Square. So we have seen this happen. It's not just about Starbucks, although that's certainly been a high-profile situation lately. But this type of pressure and this type of commercial gentrification is happening in every single business district across the city, within our main streets, as well as in business districts that are not formally main streets. So what we are proposing is not to ban chain stores, but rather to adopt legislation that other cities have had in place for a long time, which is to require conditional use permits when these types of businesses are looking to open up in business districts. We know that they have an impact not just on the type of, the character and the feel of the neighborhood. There are impacts on the other surrounding local businesses in terms of competition, but also livability impacts. Are they as respectful of neighborhood hours when they're loading and unloading things? Are they contributing and hiring local folks? Are their wages and benefits the same? So there's a distinction in many ways between our locally owned Boston neighborhood businesses and the national, multinational corporations that are now looking to come in, since our local businesses have put in such time and energy to building up their business districts. So following the model of many other successful ordinances in other cities, this one would define a chain store as a formula retail use within the zoning code. That would be a business that has 11 or more locations around the world and 2 of the following features: a standardized array of merchandise, a standardized facade, a standardized decor and color scheme, uniform apparel, standardized signage, trademark, or service mark. So essentially, if you have a lot of branches that have some consistency to it, that's how we define you as a chain store. And if you want to open up in one of our main streets districts or other business districts, all we're asking is that you appear before the ZBA to get a conditional use permit. That is a requirement that many businesses are already going through because our zoning code is so specific about what type of use is allowed site by site by site. So it's not adding an additionally burdensome, extra. It's not adding an incredibly additional burden. It is merely giving residents and stakeholders that voice that they need to have, because there's a difference when Starbucks is in the neighborhood, when Petco's in the neighborhood, when Popeyes is in the neighborhood, compared to that locally owned shop. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and certainly want to thank Councilor Wu for her leadership. I'm very proud to join her as a co-sponsor on this matter. As the chair of Small Business and Consumer Affairs Committee, I know how important small businesses are to building a sense of community and neighborhood character. They are places where neighbors meet and build community. At small businesses in my neighborhood, Dudley Cafe in particular, it hosts a trivia night. Dudley Doe, which is no longer with us, used to host family game nights. There are different community events that happen in our small businesses. I know historically in communities of color, barbershops play a key role in really building a sense of community where men and young boys get to share wisdom. At our beauty salons, we see the same thing, serving as social networks, sharing ideas, building connections with women. So whether it's a coffee shop, a hardware store, corner store, restaurant, they are so vital to our communities. I want to just make clear that this is not about prohibiting big chains, that this is really just about giving communities a voice in the process. I was really proud to attend your hearing in Codman Square and hearing from residents in that neighborhood and how that process went awry. So it's very important that we give communities, residents, a chance to weigh in. I believe that's really important, and this would do that. I think about our different commercial districts throughout the neighborhood and how special they are. I think about even Newbury Street and what Newbury Street looked like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, with lots of boutiques that were very unique, and now it's just filled with big chains. It looks just like a mall somewhere. I still love Newbury Street. But, so this is important. Coming back to small business, they're also key in terms of building wealth in our communities and driving our local economy. Small businesses create jobs for our local residents. They play a crucial role in helping to close race and gender gaps, particularly when we have small businesses of color or that are owned by women. And it's just an opportunity for residents and neighbors to build community wealth. And so I'm proud to support and stand here as a co-sponsor on this matter and encourage my colleagues to join us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for Councilor Edwards for joining as a co-sponsor as well.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My support for this ordinance is really prompted by a recent incident in the North End when it comes to Starbucks. And particularly, I think when we look at the processes that we have now with zoning, we cannot and should not treat a Starbucks like a local coffee shop. They should be treated differently because their impact is differently, both in terms of positives and both in terms of negatives. We should see chain restaurants and chain entities as a growing sense of our growing city, and how we regulate them should be something that forever puts them in a position not where they're competing against our local businesses, but they're essentially treated as though they could be adding to our community. And if they're not, that we should make sure that our local businesses are not displaced by them. We've discussed many times, actually, at other hearings and when I was working for the city, about local business displacement and how in many cases it dovetails the gentrification we're seeing in our community. We're seeing that when a barber shop or a local coffee shop is displaced and, let's say, is replaced by a Starbucks or some other commercial entity, they don't serve the same populations. They're not able to do the same things. They're not serving the same food. They're not necessarily knowing the history or really are integrating the community in a real way. Also, as we're seeing people being displaced from our communities, a lot of them, those new entities that come in are not actually, the people who are gentrifying are not going to the traditional local businesses either. So we have a real issue in terms of how our community or how our city is growing. And when we have this type of commercial displacement happening at this rapid pace, it's our responsibility, I think, to make sure our zoning code protects our local businesses, doesn't necessarily prohibit growth in business, but make sure that as our communities are growing, that we are actually growing with the Starbucks and with our local businesses and not being overtaken by them.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I certainly appreciate and share the intent that this is written by the three co-sponsors and echo the call for supporting our local business districts. I yesterday spent time in all four of my local Main Streets districts within District 6. make it a point to, as frequently as possible, utilize our small businesses and, Lord knows, eat at our local restaurants. I pride myself on that, perhaps too much. I would just urge a little bit of caution with a change to the zoning code. Again, I think the intent is important and noble and one that I share. But this is a very, very complicated Gordian knot that we're talking about, and I think we need to be mindful of a couple of issues, not the least of which is how consumers rely so much on e-commerce to buy things, and that effect that can have is probably the most difficult barrier for a locally owned and operated business. Secondly, I've been proud to work with many of our colleagues, and certainly you, Council President Campbell, on our work is addressing commercial vacancies, which is growing despite the fact that the economy is so strong, despite the fact that we have more businesses. Some of the examples that had been cited, including the most recent one in District 1 with the proposed Starbucks, and Lord knows we've had that in my district as well. I think we, as local elected leaders, can often play a role in chains that aren't a good fit for our neighborhoods, being able to prevent them from coming in. Moreover, we were dealing with a very controversial issue my second month on the council when Hilo, which was it wasn't locally owned or operated, but many people thought it was, supermarket closed down, Whole Foods was coming in. It was obviously very, very controversial. That obviously, should this zoning amendment go forth, would have been a conditional use, which would have made it more difficult, although not impossible, to come in. But as the local council is able to work with them to work and support the local bodegas, to use their bulk purchasing power, to work and hire locally, a local talent, which they've been able to do as well. And I guess just my concern with the parameters of what would constitute a chain store or chain business, Roach Brothers Supermarket started in Roslindale, JP Lick started in Jamaica Plain, would both be considered. And I think those are two businesses that neither of us would necessarily think of as a large chain, but would then come under a conditional use as opposed to an allowed use in some of these cases. We already have conditional use in many of our business districts for a whole host of reasons. So I guess I'm just saying that, I will certainly participate when we have the hearing on this, but I do think that this is a very, very complicated issue, and I would just hate us to not address some of the unforeseen circumstances that may arise should we change the zoning code as it relates to chain stores. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Malley. Would you like to add your name? No. Okay. Anyone else looking to speak on this matter or add their name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Siomo, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Presley. I just quickly wanted to applaud or thank Councilor Wu and Councilor Janey and Councilor Edwards. I think it does touch many issues, including the vacant commercial lots, the as of right. I too want to be a little bit cautious here too. One, because I think the as of right hearing demonstrated how complicated it is when dealing with the zoning code and how it can show up differently in different neighborhoods. So for example, when I read this initially, when it came to chains, there are certain communities that don't have a coffee shop that's open past 4 o'clock and who may not be opposed to a chain restaurant coming their way. So how do we be mindful of pockets in the city that don't have certain types of businesses that might welcome certain types of businesses? In addition, when we talked about as of right projects, if you do conditional use for this, I'd love the conversation to not just include chain restaurants, but just the process overall, like what people should know when it comes to having knowledge about what is being built in their community. So look forward to the hearing and look forward to the conversation. Thank you again, you guys. Madam Clerk, if you could assign the second late file matter to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation.
The third late file matter, offered by Councilor Anissa Asabi George, resolution supporting amendment number 1 to House Bill 4730, an act relative to findings of the Foundation Budget Review Commission.
Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President, and I apologize for the late file, and but I think it's very important as the state is reviewing and preparing to approve its budget that we support this resolution that supports Amendment 1 and encourages the vote of the State House, our state legislature, to support this. It's very important, as we talked about, just wrapping up our budget process, we talk about the needs of the Boston Public Schools and how funding is constantly at risk and is deteriorating year after year, and often because of the I don't want to say, I want to choose the right words because I don't want to offend any colleagues up at the State House, because I'd like them to support this. So I do ask today,
Speak your truth, Councilor Asabi.
Say again?
Speak your truth.
Well, let's get this passed first. So I do ask for your support today of this resolution supporting amendment number 1 to the House Bill 4730. This was sponsored at the State House by our Boston State Rep Dan Ryan, who represents Charlestown, also endorsed by our Mayor Marty Walsh. It's an act relative to the findings of the Foundation Review Commission, which would cap the municipal revenue growth at 2.5% if the district meets all of the following criteria. If we already spend over a required contribution, if we have the greatest percentage of economically disadvantaged students, and we do not receive foundation aid. As drafted, House Bill 4730 only focuses on the foundation budget and does not review the local contribution portion of the Chapter 70 formula. We talk a lot about Chapter 70 and how it is broken. We need help fixing it, and this helps us in that process. As it is now, without the amendment, this bill will actually hurt Boston because we continue to receive minimum aid we've continued to receive minimal aid for several years, and our charter school assessment continues to rise. So I do ask that all of you sign on to this. I hope that you will. I also ask anyone viewing this at home, and I've done a little bit of social media asking the residents in the city of Boston and outside the city of Boston to call not just Boston reps, but all of the entire state delegation to support Amendment 1. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise to support the author and also to support State Representative Dan Ryan. BPS needs as much state funds as possible. We, particularly given the increase to the charter assessment, but also because we have the highest percentage of economically disadvantaged students in the state. So more funds we can get from our state counterparts and friends and colleagues, the better. So great work by our colleague to sniff this out and also send a message up to the House that we want them to support Amendment 1. Thank you, Madam President.
Sign on.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Siomo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I also rise to commend the maker, the mayor, and Representative Ryan. I brought this up several times during budget hearings, and I brought my little cheat sheet, and I'm in a bad mood, so I'm going to offend some people.
Speak your truth.
So the foundation budget was reformulated maybe 6 years ago, and we lost then. And now they're looking to do it again to lose more. And again, we all know how our net state aid continues to go down. This is only going to exacerbate it. And I read these at the hearing. Arlington is getting a 5.23% increase in the foundation budget. Belmont, very poor community, 15.85% increase. Cambridge, more like us, 6.77. And Watertown, one of my neighbors, 5.78. Boston, 0.89%. This is broken. We have more needs than any other community in the state, maybe other than Springfield and Chicopee. We need this money, these dollars, for our kids because we are teaching the most challenging population in the state. And I don't think we need to call our own reps. We need to call the suburban reps who actually did this to us. So it's just frustrating because every year we get less and less from the state. They pour more and more responsibilities on us, which costs us more money. So that's it. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councilor Siomo. Add your name, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker as well as Councilor Siomo. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. Please add my name as well, and I'd like to echo what Council Asabi George talked about, we have the largest school system in the state, but we also have students with the most challenges. We have many students that go to bed hungry at nighttime, low-income families. We have many immigrant families in our schools, a huge number of students with disabilities. Boston needs their fair share of funding so that we're able to educate and train the most disadvantaged students in the state. When I think of this type of bill, I think of students at nighttime going to bed hungry, and they're not able to effectively learn or study. And I think Boston needs all the funding we can get. After this hearing, I'm going to join my colleagues in making several phone calls to some of the state legislators throughout the state, asking them to make sure that Boston gets their fair share of state services. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Flynn. Councillor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Certainly want to commend Councillor Asabi George and the mayor for leadership on this issue. Please add my name. You know, as someone who has done advocacy around education in Boston, particularly around the opportunity and achievement gaps that exist, this is a critical issue. We need to support this amendment. You know, year after year after year after year, we see costs going up in Boston and state aid shrinking. It's just shameful that we would have a town like Belmont get a 15% increase and Boston only getting 0.89. We like to talk about equity. That certainly is not equitable. We need to make sure that our students in Boston, who are largely students of color, many who have disabilities, who are English language learners, more than half speak a language other than English. I mean, this is just outrageous, and so I certainly encourage all my colleagues here to sign on, but to continue to do the advocacy needed to make sure that we support this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janey. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Janey's name. Councillor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I don't need to reiterate what many of my dear colleagues have said in words far more eloquent than my own. I want to begin by thanking the lead sponsor of this resolution, the at-large council from Dorchester, for her great leadership on this, as well as Mayor Walsh. Every year for the last 8 years, I've had the incredible honor and privilege of sitting in the Eagle Room, usually the second week in April, to receive the budget for the city of Boston, the proposed budget, first under former Mayor Menino, now under Mayor Walsh, and the one consistent has always been we're seeing a unfunded, fully restored charter assessment, and that's only grown and been exacerbated in the 8 years that I've served on this body. This should this H4730 pass without amendment number 1, it's going to make things that gulf turn into an absolutely cavernous, because not only does it not fail to take into account the foundation budget, but it also has the potential to hurt BPS significantly in all of us by increasing our charter assessment without recognizing the fact that there's going to be the reimbursement there. So it's another way that, on top of how it's ill-conceived the way it's currently written without taking into account Chapter 70 and foundation budget, it's going to make it even worse next April should it pass. So thank you again to the at-large council from Dorchester for her leadership on this. Ask that my name be added, and we'll be contacting the state reps from District 6 presently. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and yes, I'll just lend my voice to the chorus here and thank the chair of the Education Committee for her leadership here and State Rep Ryan in the legislature. You know, obviously there is a broader discussion that we continue to want to have with BPS around sort of vision and alignment of how dollars should be dedicated and allocated, and that's an ongoing conversation. But the fact remains that there are still incredible deficits in funding, and so we need to be having those conversations at the same time. You know, how do we prioritize and dedicate our dollars and the need to have more. And a large part of that is about reimbursement. We have been in the unenviable position, and admittedly, I've operated with a level of resentment at times, that we've had to choose between whether or not to onboard a paraprofessional or a school librarian or a school nurse. These are not, we should not be having to make these sorts of choices. And so, while we're having this conversation about vision and alignment of prioritizing how our dollars are dedicated and allocated, we just can't get around the fact that there is still a deficit in funding, and we need more dollars. So, again, I thank everyone, and that's my truth. That's the best I can do when I can hear from the ladies' lounge. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Madam Clerk, if you could add, I don't know if I said this, Councilor Presley and Councilor O'Malley and Councilor Janey. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. There's not much to be said remaining. I just wanted to ask that my name be added as well and join everyone in thanking the sponsor of the resolution, the sponsor of the state legislation, and the mayor and his team for keeping us focused on this as having much larger impacts than just the within BPS. We see similar treatment of the city of Boston at the state level when it comes to transportation and our resources that we're given around transportation infrastructure and access to the T and other ways that we are bearing a lot of the burden, but not treated equitably in terms of the level of need that is in Boston. So I'm looking forward to supporting this and doing whatever I can along with everyone else to see it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you. I also don't really have much to add to the incredible comments of my colleagues. I wanted to again thank my colleague Anissa Sabi George for her leadership on this, and also thank my rep and my delegation, Dan Ryan, who represents Charlestown. I think what I really have learned so much in the budget process, being my first time going through, is that there are unique burdens that the city of Boston has, the unique choices that Councilor Presley just noted, and also just the unique population that we have puts us in a position where you cannot treat us just like we're any other school system. And that's what this does without the amendment. We need this amendment to ensure that we're on a playing field that at least acknowledges the realities that our teachers deal with, our systems deal with. We've certainly put our money into it. I believe almost a third of our budget is dedicated to making sure our kids are as educated to the best that we can, and they're moved and they're taken care of. And so what I think is most important is that the suburbs really do see that we have done what we can and we're doing our part, and we ask them to do their part. And that they also don't see us as a separate world. Our success is their success. If our children are being educated, if we're producing a generation of folks who are able to compete in this world, that is best for not only our city but the entire state. So I hope that they don't see this as us versus them conversation. This is really about bringing us all the same playing field, and I really do encourage them to pass the amendment.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Add your name. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Edwards' name. Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Just ask that my name be added.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Zakhem's name as well as the chair. And I'll just add, I mean, obviously everything has already been said. I too want to thank Councilor Sabi George for putting this forward so quickly as the chair of education. I want to thank the mayor and his team for the advocacy, as well as all of my colleagues as well, and Rep. Ryan for putting this forward. We do have a unique population in the city of Boston, and sometimes that population is unique, not because they don't have the talent to do well in school and all of that, but there's a lot more challenges that the city has to bear by virtue of being a city and by virtue of being the capital. And we also have to sometimes bear the responsibility and provide services for folks from other communities, and that takes a toll on our services and our resources to sometimes serve our own constituents. So I too want to thank everyone, including the mayor, for his leadership and advocacy, and Councilor Sabi George. And I think Councilor Siomo said it best. Those numbers just don't align given when we talk about the need of the various communities involved. So I hope those in the State House would do what's right here, and those who are watching the council meeting, we urge you to call your not just the Boston delegation, but others from other municipalities as well, and urge them to adopt this amendment. So thank you again, Councilor Sabi George. At this time, Councilor Sabi George moves for suspension of the rules and adoption of the third late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The third late file matter has been adopted. Moving on to the green sheets. Anybody wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets may do so at this time. Moving right along, I am informed by the clerk that there are 2 late file matters for the consent agenda, which in the absence of objection will be added to the consent agenda. All those in hearing and seeing no objections. This meeting has gone so long. Hearing and seeing no objections, the 2 late file matters have been added to the consent agenda. Let's see. That is it. Before we move on to the memorials, anyone looking to make a statement? Councilor Edwards?
I move for permission to make a brief statement
About 2,
about 2 people.
no problem, go ahead.
I just wanted to recognize the passing of 2 elders in my communities that I represent. The first is a woman, Milena Ciencio, who is actually my neighbor, who was one of the first people to welcome me to Boston. And she passed recently after battling some time. And her family and I are close. And her son, or her grandson, Steve Walsh, is one of the more active individuals in East Boston, who has been part of not only helping with kids, whose kids go to local schools, but also just in general being part of welcoming and building a bridge between traditional East Bostonians and a lot of our immigrant neighbors. And so I'm here to just recognize her passing, her life. She was one of the original Londoners who lived on our street, in London Street. And to see her, to have her leave has been a real detriment and loss for our community, and particularly the folks on our street. The other person I want to recognize is Commander Robert Bob Gillen. He was the commander of the USS Constitution, the 59th commander. He's a Charlestown resident, brother of Mo Gillen, for those of you who don't know, who was deeply loved. Bob served 29 years in the U.S. Navy and served during Korea and Vietnam. He's a local hero, and when I told Mo that I wanted to do and say some remarks, he said that's not really what we do. We don't really recognize, and I just recognize the generation that he comes from, that service is what you do, patriotism is how you live. And that's who Bob Gillen was. And I just wanted to recognize his passing and to thank the colleagues for signing the memorial citation in his name, and knowing that he's not been forgotten, and his service was incredibly powerful and moving to see the Navy, the sailors actually stand there by his casket and stood there in the entire wake. So it was just a powerful moment, and moving and recognizing his passing is something I wanted to do today.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor George?
I rise to celebrate the Wild Boar soccer team of Thailand, if I could do that too. And I rise both in jubilation and in sorrow. Jubilation for sure regarding the valiant rescue of 12 boys and a soccer coach of the Wild Boar soccer team of Thailand. Jubilation that the nations of Thailand, the United States, Laos, England, Australia, Myanmar, China, Japan, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, South Korea, Finland, Ukraine, Czech Republic, France, Russia, Israel, Italy, the Philippines, Finland, and Denmark could join together and show that when nations stand as one, without regard for skin color, religion, or nationality, we can achieve the seemingly impossible. A jubilation that the whole world, and I'm sure many of us, were glued to social media, if not TV, rooting for that team, that we all wanted them, boys that are similar in age to some of our kids here, that we rooted and wanted them all to escape from that flooded, dark cave. And that we, in hope, remember that when with hope, we must remember that the seemingly impossible can become our reality. And that I'm sure many of us will tell our children and our grandchildren and friends the story that we all know, that when we all came to watch this. But also in sorrow in the passing of Petty Officer First Class Seaman Coonan, who lost his life during this noble effort, that as a retired Thai Navy SEAL, he joined as a volunteer the rescue operation, that his last act was placing air tanks inside of the cave for the boys before he collapsed and died from a lack of oxygen. I hope that we always remember this joyous event and the rescue of these boys and their soccer coach, but that we also remember the loss of Officer Coonan in this effort. We have all signed a tribute that we will make sure gets to his family, because it's something I know that we all watched from afar. And, you know, my kids who belong to many sports teams, I can only imagine both the fear of those children, the concern of their coach, but also to know that there were so many interested from afar, but then so many that came, including our own U.S. SEALs, I think in particular, went over to help in this rescue. Really is an incredible testimony to human nature and love for one another and care for one another in our drive to be successful. So I'd like to thank everyone for signing on to this, and we will get this to Thailand. May I also make more of a local note for a loss, again, that we've signed on to. Just on July 4th, last week, we lost one of our Boston firefighters, a resident of Roxbury. Justin Poitras passed away as a result of injuries sustained from a motorcycle accident, and happened at the end of my street. He was only 31 years old. He was a United States Marine. He had served 4 years as a Marine and was deployed to Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was honorarily discharged from the Marine Corps, and following that discharge enrolled at UMass Boston, graduated in 2014 from the School of Health Sciences with a bachelor's degree. And as a young firefighter, just joining the fire department in 2017, he was stationed at Engine 42 after graduating from the academy. His obituary describes him as an extremely motivated, kind, and respectful young man. He was generous and volunteered countless hours at Boston Shriners Hospital, helping in the burn unit. This year, he helped the Boston Firefighters Foundation raise money for burn victims by taking part in their firefighters calendar. He was Mr. January 2018. He loved his family and he loved his firefighter brothers and sisters. In his last act of kindness and giving, Justin's organs were donated to help save the lives of 6 people. Today is a celebration of Justin's life, and I know that today we celebrate his life and mourn the loss with his families as a council. I just wanted to make note of his life, his giving personality, and his final contribution to the world. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councilor Sabri George. It was very sad, so thank you for acknowledging him. At this time, before we move on to memorials, I neglected to actually move to adopt the consent agenda. So at this time, the chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. At this time, if everyone could please rise. We will adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For the chair, Larry Wilson. For Councilor Edwards, Commander Robert Gillen, Milena Ciancio, thank you. For Councilor Janey, Carrie Mae Morgan Smith. For Councilors Presley and Janey, Daisy Janey. For Councilor Flaherty, Walter Rodriguez. For Councilor Flynn and Councilor Flaherty, Andrea Lynch. For the entire council, Lucy Fiandaca and Justin Poitras. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today, it does so in memory of those aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again in this chamber on Wednesday, August 1st at noon. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.